Excited about tonight's passage. We're in Matthew chapter 17. We're beginning at verse 22. And let's get our Bibles out. And we're going to start at verse 22. As they were gathering in Galilee, Jesus said to them, "The Son of Man is about to be delivered into the hands of men, and they will kill him, and he will be raised on the third day." And they were greatly distressed. So one chapter back, you remember Jesus pretty much said the exact same thing to his disciples. And that time Peter pushed back. He rebuked Jesus. He declared, "Oh Lord, it would not be so." And as a response, Jesus called Peter the adversary. "Get behind me, Satan." And here's literally what Jesus' words meant when he said that. We just see, "Get behind me, Satan." But here's what he meant. Get yourself in the proper place of submission to my authority, Peter, for your words and your intents are making you an adversary to my will. That's a lot of words. That might be how the Amplified Bible would say it. But that's what he meant. Peter's ambition for the ministry of Jesus, and subsequently his ambition for his own gain as a leader in the camp of Jesus, was contrary to the will of God. He had ideas. It's like, "Lord, you can't die. We're counting on you. We're counting on you to overthrow these Romans and set the Jewish religion right and take over and rule. And we want to be your right-hand guys." There was a hard reality before the disciples, and they were grieved by it. But Jesus was making it abundantly clear to them that this was his will and this was his purpose. Not only that, but we learned from Jesus that he was in complete control of what was going to happen. When Jesus first said these words recorded in the Gospel of John, the disciples didn't get what he was saying. But looking back, I'm sure it all made sense. In John 10:11, he said, "I am the good shepherd." What does the good shepherd do? The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. So Jesus is saying, I'm going to lay down my life for those that I lead. And then a few verses later, verse 15, "Just as the Father knows me and I know the Father, and I lay down my life for the sheep." He's repeating himself. But that wasn't enough. He's got more to say. Verse 17 through 18, "For this reason the Father loves me, because I lay down my life." And then here's the promise, "that I may take it up again. No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord. I have authority to lay it down, and I have authority to take it up again. This charge I have received from my Father." In that discourse in John 10, Jesus said 3 times, "I'm going to lay my life down." And the disciples still don't get it. And this speaks to our humanity, because it's hard to accept difficult truth, right? When someone brings a very difficult thing to us, we're like, "Oh, this is a hard thing to accept," and to accept it and to receive it and to understand it. And for us to receive that hard truth, sometimes it needs to be told to us over and over and over again before it sinks in, because we're resistant to the hard stuff. Jesus is in control. He will willingly lay down his life. But not only that, John 10:17, he will take it up again. Who will take Jesus' life? John 10:8, "No one takes it from me, but I lay it down of my own accord." So in today's passage, along with the one in the previous chapter, in chapter 16, Jesus made a follow-up promise. And I just don't think these guys were tuned into that. He said he will be raised on the third day. And that part probably didn't really compute with them, because all they heard is that he was going to die. They were probably overwhelmed by the tragic stuff. And there were 2 tragic things to the one glorious thing. 1, delivered into the hands of men. 2, they will kill him. 2 bad things. Later, Jesus would further define what it means to be delivered into the hands of men. And it would start with the betrayal of one of his own. And they're like, "Oh, it just keeps getting worse." And here's their response. They were greatly distressed. Now, for those of us who look back from this side of history, the resurrection is the greatest event of all time. I mean, it is the greatest event of all history, of all humanity. The biggest holiday that we celebrate as Christians is the remembrance and celebration of Jesus being risen from the dead. We sing songs about it. When we sing about Jesus rising up from the dead, we get excited about it. We know that the hold, that the authority of sin and death over our lives has been defeated in the resurrection. We look back, Jesus rising from the dead, the greatest thing that ever happened. We know that the good news, the gospel, is only good news because Jesus rose from the dead. And in John 10 and in Matthew 16 and here in Matthew 17, Jesus lets him know that he would take his own life up again. He would be raised on the third day. And yet as they heard the best of the best news of all history, they were still greatly distressed. Remember in Mark 10 when the rich young ruler came to Jesus and he said, "What must I do to inherit eternal life?" And this guy affirmed that he was dedicated, obedient to the law since his childhood. Lord, I've always done the right thing. I've been obedient to the law since I was a kid. But Jesus saw that there was something in his life that stood in the way, that there was something in this guy that was in the way of him truly giving his life over. And this wasn't a command for everyone who has a position of great leadership in the world, or this isn't a command for everyone who has wealth. Some might look at this guy was a leader, this guy was rich. Jesus wants people to give up their leadership. Jesus wants to give up their money. This isn't a command for everyone in that position. For Paul says to the wealthy in 1 Timothy 6:17, "As for the rich in this present age, charge them not to be haughty, nor to set their hopes on the uncertainty of riches, but on God, who richly provides us with everything to enjoy. They are to do good, to be rich in good works, and be generous and ready to share, thus storing up treasures for themselves as a good foundation for the future, so that they may take hold of that which is truly life." So the problem for this young man wasn't the fact that he was a ruler or that he was rich. It was probably that he was missing out on the things that Paul was saying here in 1 Timothy. Maybe he was haughty, or maybe he had set his hopes in his riches instead of in God. To the rich who are not haughty, who place their hope in God as their provider, Paul promises that their generosity will lead to treasures in heaven. But in this discourse with the rich young ruler, she would say it too. Jesus says, "Sell it all, give it to the poor, and you will store up treasures in heaven." Both of them are being promised treasures in heaven. To the rich, remain rich, but with your wealth, practice generosity. To the rich young ruler, give it all away, follow me. Both of them, treasures in heaven. And this is how that conversation ended. First off, this is important. Jesus looked at him and says he loved him. Jesus loved him. And from his love, he gave this instruction. And how did the guy respond? Disheartened by the saying, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. Now, in tonight's passage, the disciples heard the bad news that led up to the good news, and they were saddened. In Mark's passage, the rich young ruler heard the bad news that led up to the good news, treasures in heaven, and he was saddened and depressed. And this is a struggle that we have. This is a struggle that all of us deal with in one way or another, to see the good news that is produced from the inevitable hardships and trials of life. We struggle with that. In both cases, it is an act of love on Jesus' part to speak the hard truth. In John 13:1, it says that Jesus loved his own who were in the world, and he loved them to the end. And in Mark 10, Jesus looked on the rich young ruler, and it says he loved him. This is important because we might struggle with the idea of hardship. We might struggle with the idea of sacrifice. We might struggle with the idea of tragedy. But Jesus lets us know the hard stuff because he loves us. In this world you will have tribulation. Why would Jesus say that? Because he loves us. He wants us to be prepared. It's easy for us to tell people hard things, right? Some people are easier to tell hard things to than other. It's easy to tell people hard things, and here's the caveat. Here's when it's easy. When we don't love them. It's easy to tell people we don't love hard stuff. It's easy to tell people that they're going to suffer hard times if we don't love them. Or even easier if we don't like them. I don't like them. Hey, guess what? You're going to suffer hard times for what you're doing. Because what happens is it feeds in us a sense of justice and self-righteousness that we might feel satisfied in seeing those we disdain suffer for their actions. So it's easy to tell people we don't like, hey, hard things are going to come your way. And yet it's a fruitless endeavor if it's not given in love. If it's obvious that someone does not love us and they give us a warning, we're not likely to receive it. We might become adversarial to their warning. But when we know that someone loves us, we're more inclined to receive the warning. If you have hard things to say to somebody, make sure they know that you love them. In Proverbs 27, verse 6, it says, "Faithful are the wounds of a friend, profuse are the kisses of an enemy." Oh, the wounds of a friend. They might say hard things to us, but they do it because they love us. Jesus gave the disciples the bad news because he loved them. He wanted them to be prepared, but he also wanted to give them hope. Bad, tragic, painful things are coming, but after, I will take up my life again. But after, I will be raised on the third day. They weren't even hearing that. It was Charlie Brown's teacher at that point. I'm going to be handed over. I'm going to be betrayed. I'm going to be killed. Bad things are going to happen to me. But womp, 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 womp. They weren't even hearing that. These are promises that the disciples would not enjoy or rejoice in until after the resurrection. They would look back and they're like, why did we not get it when he said it before? But we have all the teachings and the lessons available to us. We have hindsight. And some of us who have walked with Jesus for many years and we have maturity and we have spiritual character, we might still grieve the idea of loss and hardship, but hope is still our great motivation. Hey, hard things are happening. You got a bad diagnosis. You got bad news. You lost someone you love. Your roof is leaking. Bad news. Oh, but I still have hope beyond that. For the rich young ruler, Jesus taught his disciples, it's hard for the rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven, but with God, all things are possible. So that guy left, and Peter's like, Lord, we gave everything away. Jesus said, hey, if you want to follow me, give everything away. Sell everything, give it to the poor, and follow me. You'll have treasures in heaven. He left disheartened. And then Peter's like, well, we did that. We gave away everything. And Jesus went on to teach them, hey, don't write that guy off. With God, all things are possible. And I believe the all-surpassing lesson there is that it's hard for any of us to enter into his kingdom. How hard is it for a rich person to enter into the kingdom of heaven? Well, how hard is it for anyone? We all cling to that promise. With God, all things are possible. We all struggle with haughtiness. We all struggle to put our hope in God over the comforts of this world. And the promise for all of us is, with God, all things are possible. So they heard the best news that the world would ever know, and they were sad because the immediate tragedy was hard to get past. And this is the beauty of the scriptures, that God knows our weakness, God knows our nature, and he's diligent to repeat himself. Hope is our greatest friend in the face of hardship. We need to be reminded of hope often. Verse 24. And when they came to Capernaum, the collectors of the 2 drachma tax went up to Peter and said, does your teacher not pay the tax? And he said, yes. I think there was doubt in his voice. He said yes like a question. Yes. And when he came into the house, he's like, Lord, what do I do about this? This guy's asking if we pay the tax. And this was a tax for the temple. This wasn't government tax. This was a tax to support the temple. And so when he came into the house, Jesus spoke to him first, saying, what do you think, Simon? From whom do kings of the earth take toll or tax from their sons or from others?" And when he said from others, Jesus said to him, "Then the sons are free. However, not to give offense to them, go to the sea and cast a hook and take the first fish that comes up. And when you open its mouth, you will find a shekel. Take that and give it to them for me and for yourself." I have never found money in the mouth of a fish. I look. I wonder if there's any money in here. This tax was collected from Jewish men over 20. So the moment you turn 20, they came to you and they said, "You need to support the temple." This wasn't a tax for the government. Jesus had a conversation about that at a different point, and Jesus lays out a couple principles here. The kings of the earth do not tax their own children. They tax their citizens. They tax people from other countries and other nations in trade. And Jesus lets the disciples know they are sons of the king. They are sons of God. They are free. Do we have to pay this tax? You guys are sons of God. You're free. So Jesus is telling them, no, you don't need to pay the temple tax. However, he didn't want his disciples to give offense to the temple and to those who collected the tax. He didn't want to personally give offense in terms of a tax that he, God's Son, was not required to pay. And I'll bet they had the money. It would not have been hard for them to make arrangements with Judas. "Hey, Judas, get into the money bag. Oh, it's not check your pockets. All right? I'm sure you got it. You could pay the temple tax." I'm sure they could have paid it. But Jesus wanted to fulfill both things. Two things he wanted to fulfill: their freedom to not pay and their willingness to not give offense. He found a way to do both. Hey, we're sons of the king. We're free. We don't need to pay. However, we're going to pay. So he miraculously provided the money in the mouth of a fish. This is a principle we see over and over again in the New Testament. You have freedom, but at times you will give up that freedom for the sake of ministering to others. Paul did this in terms of eating meat that may have come from a pagan temple offering. He talks about this in 1 Corinthians and in Romans. People would bring their animal, maybe a lamb or an ox, to the pagan temple for sacrifice. Then, to support the temple, the meat that remains would be sold in the local markets. And people who were saved out of that pagan world, they might have a strong conviction about eating that meat. They don't want to associate with anything from that pagan world that they were saved out of. And so they're like, we can't eat that. But Paul told the believers who are wrestling with this in 1 Corinthians 10:25, "Eat whatever is sold in the meat market without raising any question on the grounds of conscience, for the earth is the Lord's and the fullness thereof. If one of the unbelievers invites you to dinner and you are disposed to go, eat whatever is set before you without raising any questions on the grounds of conscience." But the point of the whole passage was this: yes, that is meat, and meat is meat. The Lord provides. But don't seek your own good, but seek the good of your neighbor. It might be an offense to someone, and if it is, don't eat it. Be mindful of the conviction of others. He makes it clear that our liberty should not be determined by someone else's conscience. In 1 Corinthians 10:23, he says, "All things are lawful, but not all things are helpful. All things are lawful, but not all things build up." He says, sure, you're free. Just as Jesus said, we are free. We are sons of the king. We are free. We don't have to pay the tax. But for the sake of not offending them, we're going to do it. And Paul lays this principle out. Hey, you're free. You're free to do these things. However, it's not always helpful. However, it doesn't always build others up. Therefore, don't seek your own good, but seek the good of your neighbor. You're free, but don't use your freedom as an offense to others. Sometimes we set our freedom aside for the sake of serving other people. And here's what Paul calls this action: eating and drinking and doing all to the glory of God. So whether you eat or whether you drink or whatever you do, do all to the glory of God. You've heard that verse. This is the context. He clarifies it even more in Romans 14, verse 20. Do not, for the sake of food, destroy the work of God. Everything is indeed clean, but it is wrong for anyone to make another stumble by what he eats. So he says, consider others with your freedom and do not make unnecessary offense as you do what you say, I am permitted to do this. I am free to do this. I'm allowed to eat this meat. I'm allowed to do these things. Where did you buy this meat? Well, I bought it in the market. Oh, you might offend someone who has a conviction about that. And yet he clarifies the same principle in terms of our liberty in verse 22. Hey, the faith that you have, keep between yourself and God. Blessed is the one who has no reason to pass judgment on himself for what he approves. So we are free, yet at times we give up our freedom to serve others. Well, what's that mean? Well, it means that there are Christians in our midst and in our community who have different convictions about different things. I was saved out of addiction. I was saved out of alcoholism. I have strong convictions about this. Well, listen, don't serve wine when they come over to your house for dinner. Don't bring it up. Be mindful of the conviction of others, yet with your freedom, blessed is the one who has no reason to pass judgment on himself for what he approves. I love how in this passage from Matthew, Jesus preserves both sides of this principle for himself and for Peter. We are free to not pay the tax, but to not offend, we will pay it, and yet we'll still not pay it. I love how he did that. And in this, I see Jesus wants us to have both of these things in our life. That he wants us to have the freedom to practice what we are free to do, but he also wants us to make sacrifices in order to not offend others. Chapter 18, verse 1. At this time the disciples came to Jesus saying, who is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven? And I think they were talking about themselves. Because Jesus obviously would have said, well, I am. But that's not what they were talking about. They're like, what do we need to do to become the greatest in your kingdom? And calling to him a child, they put him in the midst of them, and he said, truly I say to you, unless you turn and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Whoever humbles himself like this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. Whoever receives one such child in my name receives me, but whoever causes one of these little ones who believes in me to sin, it would be better for him to have a great millstone fastened around his neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea. When these kind of questions came up, Lord, which one of us can sit at your right hand? Which one of us can sit at your left? When these kind of questions came up, I often wonder, why didn't Jesus just tell the disciples, listen, the physical manifestation of the kingdom that you guys are looking for isn't coming quite yet. Guys, I'm not going to overthrow Rome and set up a throne for myself here on earth anytime soon. Not in your life. Why didn't he tell them that? You will not hold positions of authority and power in some government that you think I'll be setting up real soon. Not happening. He doesn't do that. He just lets them have this misperception. They're still thinking about and worrying about their position of authority and power in some earthly kingdom. Jesus doesn't clear up this misconception. Instead, he speaks to their hearts and he shows them that they are on the wrong path of thought and reason. He lets them know that greatness in the kingdom is not based on great works or words, but on childlike humility and spirit. They were asking the wrong question. They should have been concerned with serving the Lord, not about gaining positions of power. What child on their own, just in their natural state as a child, has ever initiated a hostile corporate takeover? The company's been taken down and these people have moved in and they've taken over. Who's running it? Little 4-year-old Billy. What child has ever done that? What child has ever overthrown a world leader? What child has ever fired the board? The board's been fired. Who did it? Oh, that was Jennifer. Who's that? She's a 7-year-old. What child has ever jockeyed for a position of power and self-promotion in the government? That's not what children do. It's not what they're about. They don't seek to rule. They don't seek to overthrow nations. They don't have the ambition or the desire to be the CEO of some massive holding company. What do children want? Children want to be loved. They want to be cared for. They want to have a relationship. Children have a very innocent kind of faith. Children are quick to trust. We say, well, no. Children have a temper and children are selfish. That's true, but that's just a lack of maturity. In so many ways, children haven't gained the kind of pride that adults are plagued with. In terms of their own worth, they know humility. In verses 5 through 6, Jesus teaches us about the value of children. If you receive a child in his name, he says, you receive me. He's letting them know that he accompanies the heart and the spirit of a child when that child is received in his name, which means, if I'm seeing this right, that Jesus enjoys the company of children. He is surrounded by them as he gives this teaching. And in a way, he's saying, these are the kind of people my presence enjoys. Their faith, their humility, their spirit. The kind of people who have an innocent faith. The kind of people who are quick to trust. The kind of people who aren't plagued with that pride that takes over our lives as we get older. The kind of people who, in terms of their own worth, know their humility. And then he says that children are able to believe in him. That if you attack the faith or the belief of a child, it would be better. This would be a better thing for you to do. That you would have a millstone tied around your neck and be thrown into the sea. That would be a better option than to cause one of these children to sin. And this is what greatness in the kingdom looks like. Innocent faith, quick to trust, humility, and simple belief. Verse 7, woe to the world for temptations to sin, for it is necessary that temptations come, but woe to the one by whom the temptation comes. And if your hand or your foot causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to enter life crippled or lame than with 2 hands or 2 feet to be thrown into eternal fire. And if your eye causes you to sin, tear it out and throw it away. It's better for you to enter life with 1 eye than with 2 eyes and be thrown into the hell of fire. So he's kind of shifting topics. And yet at the same time, he's still kind of talking about the same thing. In the previous passage, woe to the one who might cause a child who believes in him to sin. Woe to that one. Oh, you want to cause a child who believes in me to sin? Woe upon you. And now, woe to the one who brings temptation to others. That is, woe to the one who, by tempting you, might cause you to sin. See, he's talking about the same thing. Not just children this time. Woe to the one who seeks to cause any other to sin. Woe to the one who intentionally brings temptation into the lives of others. And maybe this is old news to you, but I've never really noticed it before. He talks about the hand and the foot that brings temptation. He talks about the eye that causes temptation and how it would be better to get rid of those things than to allow them to continually cause you to sin. But I don't think he's talking about cutting hands off and cutting feet off and plucking eyes out. He's not talking about that. He's still talking about the person he references in verse 7. Woe to the one by whom the temptation comes. He's not talking about feet and hands and eyes. He's talking about people. And he continues into verses 7 through 9. Jesus is telling us that we are the children now. And the one who brings temptation into our life, that they need to be separated from us. They are the ones that we might need to cut out of our life. They are the ones that we might need to pluck away from our presence. And there's a strong indication here that there are people who might very well be a close and integral part in our life, that because of what they're doing, we might need to cut them out. They are likened to hands and feet and eyes. The absence of them is likened to being crippled or lame or half blind. Who would cause a child to sin? A stranger that the child doesn't know or trust? Probably not. The one who would cause a child to sin is the person the child knows and trusts. Now, there might be people in our lives that we are close to that are toxic and harmful, and they lead us into compromise. I'm sure we all have toxic and harmful people in our lives, and they might not lead us into compromise. They might not bring temptation into our life, and we're able to categorize them. They're in my life, and they are ministry. But sometimes those toxic people in our life, and what happens is they drag us down. They bring a temptation to us. Like whenever they come around, I do bad things. They always drag me into things I know I shouldn't do. That's who he's talking about here. And if we can't be strong in their presence, if we can't withstand their influence, then it would be better if we cut them off from our life. And for me, when I think of this passage in this light, it almost sounds worse than cutting off your hand. What do you mean you would cut someone out of your life? That's not very compassionate. That's not very loving. Yeah, but if that person is bringing temptation into my life and causing me to sin, I believe Jesus is saying they need to be plucked out of my life. They need to be cut off. But we can control our hand. Our hand doesn't control us. We can control our foot doesn't control us. Notice it's just one hand, it's just one foot, it's just one eye. He's only talking about one eye. There's no way that one eye will cause you to sin and the other eye will remain innocent. You ever thought about that? If your eye causes you to sin, oh, my left eye is given to lust, but my right eye never looks. Oh, my right hand always steals candy bars at Wawa. Oh, my left hand would never do that. Oh, my right foot runs away from the obedient path, but my left foot never does. That's why I'm always doing the splits. We have control over the influence of these things. We don't have control over other people. And we should have control over the influence they have on us. And if we don't, even though it might be hard, it might make our life difficult, it is better that we cut these people who successfully tempt us into sin out of our life. Verse 10, see that you do not despise one of these little ones, for I tell you that in heaven their angels always see the face of my Father who is in heaven. What do you think? If a man has 100 sheep and one of them has gone astray, does he not leave the 99 on the mountain and go in search of the one that went astray? And if he finds it, truly I say to you, he rejoices over it more than over the 99 that never went astray. So it is not the will of my Father who is in heaven that one of these little ones should perish. Now, the kind of people who intentionally bring temptation into your life, or the kind of people that might cause one of the little ones who believe in Jesus to sin, is not the kind of person who loves you and cares for your welfare. They don't respect you. They don't seek your best. They don't put your needs over theirs. These are the kind of people who are arrogant and prideful and selfish. They don't look up to others. They look down upon them. They're the kind of people who despise people. They look down upon them in contempt. So Jesus tells his disciples, don't be like the tempter. Don't be like the one who causes a child to sin. Don't despise these children. Don't look down upon them, for you are called to be like them, not above them. And then this parable. This is still about the children. If you, wanting to be the greatest in the kingdom, seek to walk in childlike humility and childlike belief, if you cut off from your life those who tempt you or those who cause you to sin, then know this, you are truly loved and special to God. And here's the point of the 1 in 99. It's not about the abandonment of 99 for the sake of finding the one. That's not really the point. It's not the point of going to find the one. That's not the point of the parable. The point is the level of rejoicing and the enormity of God's compassion. The rejoicing is the point of the parable. The shepherd who finds the one lost sheep rejoices. This parable is about rejoicing. It's not about the one sheep being more special or more significant than others. It's about the heart of God and his compassion and his rejoicing over the preservation and salvation of those who have childlike faith. God rejoices to have fellowship with those who have innocent faith, who are quick to trust, who walk in humility, and who possess a simple belief. The presence of Jesus accompanies these traits. And if we want to be the greatest in his kingdom, according to Jesus' instructions, then we will know his presence and he will rejoice to possess us. We are the sheep. And the heart of God for us is rejoicing. So let me conclude with this summation. Here's what it means to be the greatest in God's kingdom. To be like a child in faith, humility, and innocence. To rid our lives of any influence that endangers our belief because we maybe not have gained the strength to resist the temptation. And it means that we, in the heart of Jesus, are like the one lamb that is found, and Jesus rejoices to call us his own. He found the lamb. The found lamb, it says the found lamb was to him the greatest in the flock. And Jesus is teaching his disciples and us to be like that found lamb. Who's the greatest in the kingdom? That lamb was the greatest. And he rejoiced to find it.